People. So before getting into what will be a circling session with my friend Sunil, I just want to give a brief introduction to circling, what it is. Now, it when you watch this video, it may look like Sunil and I are having a conversation, just a conversation, but it's like, well, what's even the topic of this conversation? It's not exactly that. Circling is a conversation practice, but it's one where you're speaking to the aliveness of the moment, and it requires a lot of mindfulness and, well, phenomenological perception to discern what is going on in your experience, the other person's experience. And there's a few kind of dynamics that play out. So when you're circling with someone, the general guidelines are you will, when they are speaking, you fully listen to them and you're not pre-planning your response. And you call out kind of all the dynamics that are happening in real time, the framing. You can comment on the physicality of the space, what you notice in the other person, movements and posturing and such like this. You can speak to what you're feeling as well in that moment. Was maybe someone uses a particular word that resonates with you, and you can talk about that. And you can circle on a specific subject, or you can kind of just free flow, freestyle, as we do here in this video. Circling it's kind of hard to describe. To understand it, you got to see it and then do it. Really, you learn best what circling is by doing it, because it is such a feeling process. And I believe that circling is a very powerful practice, and one that many more people need to learn how to do if we to learn how to understand one another. Circling is so essential. So I really believe in this practice. I really think it's very, very important, sort of a necessary skill, because as it stands, people don't know how to really communicate with each other. And circling is a way of slowing down and really trying to get in touch with who is in front of you, what are they saying. And often from these sessions, I find that a lot of wisdom, surprising wisdom, comes out. I feel very understood. I feel like I understand the person in front of me at a much deeper level. And so this is exciting. So Sunil is a friend of mine who actually is an interesting guy. He spent 5 years living on a tiny island off the west coast of Scotland, which was a retreat center, sort of this Buddhist island. And him and we first met doing an eye gazing, sort of eye contact event where you don't speak and you just stare into each other's eyes. And we had like a really, really intense session. And then a year later or so, we met again at another eye gazing event, and it was super intense for whatever reason between us. It's like really something special is happening there, and we remembered each other. It's like, yo, you were the guy from before. We've done this before, and it was just as intense before. And then we exchanged contact details, became friends, and it turns out Sunil is into circling as well. So Sunil initially started by doing, he got into circling by doing some other related practices like embodied listening and authentic relating and interpersonal meditation. And so yeah, it's been great to have met this guy and sort of circling can feel like a very intimate personal practice because you're really sort of getting into each other's space and you sit in silence for periods of time, which is actually those silent periods are really where the sort of the meat of the circling happens in a way that might not be obvious from the outside. But yeah, Sunil is a very interesting guy. He does coaching to try to help people get into work that they find most meaningful to their life and they are passionate about. I'll link to his coaching page down below. But for the meantime, enjoy this introduction to circling.
Use it, right? Like kind of see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm gonna enter circling mode.
Okay, I'm curious. Curious how you do that.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because there's not how do I enter circling mode. I don't feel so much a distinct shift in mode of being
Mhm.
anymore, and I think that's because I'm becoming more habituated with circling mode. So the transition from non-circling to circling is a smoother
Mhm.
transition.
So you're kind of living there more often in this way of being and interacting.
Yeah, because it's like taking it seriously as as a way of communicating intimately and incorporating some of circling behavior into regular life, regular conversations.
I'm kind of curious, like, is there a change in your attention when you said circling mode?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can pick out. There's definitely it's interesting. It's not I was going to say a closing down of the world, but not. It doesn't have this restrictive, narrowing sense. But what I mean is like, okay, for this moment here, forget about the greater world. Forget about uh, the world story, politics, what's happening, the day of the week, these things, but sort of filter that stuff out. So it has that kind of like less perception, but more, which brings in more perception to the here and now.
I noticed for myself, for example, there was a little bit of a change of, yeah, that's why maybe why I asked the question about attention. It's like there was a change in where maybe the level of attention, like the focus, and also there was an aspect of bringing my attention in what, for example, into my body. Like I'm kind of noticing more about what's happening there. I'm less in my ideas and my thoughts, and I'm kind of observing a little bit more what's happening in my body. I'm using more my senses.
Well, even then, just you're referring the ideas up here and then the body down here. Do you spatially feel that move and attention as well?
I'm not sure if it's kind of, necessarily up here or down here, but maybe that was just reflecting my experience of like, like I brought attention kind of down here a little bit more.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny because I guess your discussion was this sort of up, down, down into the body. The move I was referring to was the out, in, widening, narrowing. But yeah, it's quite funny to think that narrowing might have this sort of affiliation with contraction and something harsh, but I'm talking about a way in which it's benign and nice, and your move with going in downwards from me, this one like hell is down, but this is a grounding down and more in touch with the here and the now, and in some way that feels more realistic.
Yeah, maybe kind of directions don't make sense, like kind of. Also, while you were saying that, like the word spaciousness popped up into my head, and I think there's something about that. It's like, for me, like this spaciousness kind of more space between the words, kind of residing more in this silence, in this quiet place, observing, looking, coming into like kind of maybe and not knowing.
Yeah, there's images that are popping up into mind here, and I'm taken by a few things. You said space doesn't make sense, but then you're talking about a spaciousness, but it doesn't make sense because the spaciousness is imbued with this not knowing as well. So open not knowing, and how do you relate to that not knowing? Because they'd be confused in a discombobulating way, but I don't think that's what you're touching on.
So how am I relating to that space in this moment? Yeah, it can be different, I think, like what you're touching on like yeah, maybe. So when I'm approaching that, I can have a kind of different. It's like the unknown. No, like can I have a reaction of like, oh, curiosity, excitement, or I can have a reaction of fear, and it's the same with that space. So right now, I think I'm in some sort of an in between in my relationship to it.
Yeah.
There's a sort of nervousness and maybe kind of curiosity. There's still some tension in my relationship.
Oh, interesting.
To that space in this moment.
Can you get into that tension? Yeah, so I'm curious. I got two questions. I'm curious. Okay, where is the tension in the space in the body, and then what meaning can you derive from that tension?
Good questions. So there's some tension, so like I have some tension in my head, in my breathing. I notice there's like a little bit of a shortness of breathing. I can hear it in my voice as I sort of speak it. It's like, oh,
right
yeah,
there, right,
yeah,
like that sigh was like,
yeah. It's like, oh, okay, it's okay.
Yeah, like you gave yourself permission to take a longer breath.
Yeah, go through that, because when it's not noticed, it remains there.
Yes.
And it's like me coming out and saying that. I've kind of I'm like showing everybody the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Well, I even think because you call it out, the shortness of breath. I mean, I technically have diagnosed asthma, but it's been very mild my whole life. But having a shortness of breath, I'm sort of very familiar with that feeling where the breath's kind of cut off right before you can feel sort of replenished. And so then when you reveal, that sticking point that you are going through just then, that's actually makes me feel more connected to you, right? Relate to that. Oh yeah, it's like, yeah, give yourself that permission to breathe deeper.
It also seems to expand the space. Like now so having kind of exposed that, there's more room for that space. So there's more room for me to be in this moment. So it's also related to kind of mind movement, kind of thoughts of, oh, like how do I look? What am I gonna say in the next moment? Wanting to perform maybe, or look good. So that kind of all that mind stuff, all those thoughts are being expressed in the body, in my breathing.
Yeah.
And me noticing and witnessing that breathing kind of help me to release that.
Yes.
And also release the mind stuff.
Yes. Wow, I have so much that like sort of this springing up as you're talking. I just this incredible sense that this micro singular example pertains to so much of the greater world. And in an instance where there's some tension, and that can lead to anxiousness and such, and the breathing is cut short, you're not fully oxygenating the brain, which stifles performance. And I think I see there's this inclination that a lot of people are scared of the unknown, so it's like hold on tighter. But actually, your best move is to open up and admit, I don't know what's coming next, what the future will bring. But then by doing that, you're making yourself vulnerable, but preparing that I will be in my best performance for whatever is coming. I can't foresee. So I just catching on to when you said, what will I say next?
Yeah, my best performance is being fully in that space.
Yeah.
Open, relaxed.
Not knowing what you will say next. And then not trying to predict, or, it's like particularly the antithesis of circling, like not trying to predict or anticipate what to say next, but seeing what comes forth and out often leads to the more fruity, interesting material content, and
yeah, it's like I'm going deeper into this kind of unknown moment, and I'm listening as carefully as I can, but not in a tight way, for the things to come. So it's like, I don't know, kind of, I often think about it like dancing. Like, so I don't, like, if you're doing some dancing that's kind of expressing the music and it's not like steps, then I'm listening to the music and letting the music move me. So in the same way, I'm kind of in touch with this moment and this space, and listening for what wants to be expressed in that in that moment, through that space, not knowing.
Yeah, I feel like I felt into something there. You can correct me if this was wrong, but going with your dancing analogy, there's freestyle where you're totally just making it up, but then within the freestyle you can have some choreographed moves or some moves you've rehearsed before that. When appropriate, you see the right timing, you pull it out, the opportunity. I wonder actually if maybe your dancing analogy is one of those. Certainly, if not, if it hasn't been explicated, you've thought through that, practice, rehearsed stating that analogy.
Yeah.
And then it's like, here's the dance move, analogy move, thought stream. They're like, okay, I'll pull that out. But then the moments when I noticed where it seemed like you really were freestyling, there was like this lull, like you took a break and then came up with something that totally novel.
Yeah. It's interesting that, I think that fits.
Right.
Like, that, maybe you have like kind of rehearsed like moves. I guess we all have that. No, we have these forms. No, we have these words. We have gestures that that we're used to using. So a lot of it is pre-constructed. But it's like, how do I jam with that? And that's the important part. Like, so I need the pre-constructed parts as well. Otherwise I wouldn't have any words.
But my interest just rose because I felt the energy of the conversation sort of really rise right there. And then I think you were getting to like a new point, sort of the need for practiced move sets in novel situations. And maybe this speaks to plays, where like play, we were playing earlier, the importance of play, because that sets you up for the times where the shit hits the fan, and okay, I've been practicing this and rehearsing this, and then I got the sense actually we just lost it. Did you feel that as well?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of comfortable sitting here. It's like I'm waiting for the next wave. Yeah, maybe.
Wave of what is my thought.
Maybe a wave of kind of information of, I don't like to say like thoughts or ideas, but information. So maybe that can come in different ways.
Yeah, I do have the sense of, yeah, if you sit and you wait, that comes. But also, conscious of the fact that like there's a recording here, and the seeming to the viewer, the waiting spaces seem like dead space, dead time.
Yeah.
When actually, that's the incredibly informative moment. I'm like feeling into this moment, feeling into reality to receive those waves, those new waves of information.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that's where, so I felt a real like aliveness in that dead time. And it's curious you said to the person watching this that they might experience that as like dead time. But I'm not so sure. Maybe that's kind of part of you that's projecting kind of that. There's you're having both, maybe you're having both experiences, right? The aliveness of that moment, but also this little thought going on of like maybe the person watching this is going to experience this as a dead time, and maybe I should fill in and say something. And so both of those are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And I noticed that in myself often. It's like there's this little noise, this voice saying, say something intelligent. But
that was quite interesting. We both moved at the same time. Yeah.
And I noticed that it's also hard to stay in that quiet place and just to wait. Maybe it's more difficult to do when you're recording and you have maybe an audience.
Yeah, so for me, I think it was another elephant in the room or something like that. Like, okay, it sort of reached an unignorable point. I've got to call it out.
But what if like you and I sitting in that space, what if that got transmitted?
I think really all of this is in service to that, whatever to call it, the sort of the transcendent. Like that's the key thing that needs to be transmitted.
And it feels like sometimes that is between the words. It's not even in the words. Or
well, I'm having a thought of between us actually. that silent space is so bubbly and warm and edifying. Again, because I'm sort of in circling mode, but I know there's a kind of mode to be in when you're sort of watching videos and such. That's kind of like more of a hungry, like, come on, give me the next bite, give me the next thing, the next. And so there's a playing to that mode or trying to speak to that mode of being, which maybe I'm projecting, right? It's not the person watching is not even there in that mode of being, but speak to that mode of being and be like, you know, you can step out of that mode and see this mode.
And what's the most effective way to do that? Because you're trying to it seems like you're taking into account whatever mode the viewer might be in, but you want to take them somewhere else, really, right? So what's the most effective way?
That's still an open question for me, very much. So part of my thought is to demonstrate a kind of way of being that's so unnormal in ways that people are too, go.
We're like kind of taking people on a journey. Feels like we're taking people on a journey, and we are also going on that journey. Now, since the beginning of the conversation, it's like you said, I've kind of gone into circling mode. So before we were chatting, and then we started this kind of slightly special way of interacting that's helping us contact a different way of being and of interacting in a contact with this kind of space. And yeah, I don't know, like maybe people seeing that happening can also come along with us on that path.
Yep. Well, just then I felt like I was coming along on your path. Actually, I just noticing the way I'm entering your frame. I'm leaning in, and it's inquisitive, like, okay, tell me more. And I was in the empty unknowing. I don't know. You asked me a question. I don't know. I don't know how to respond. I don't know what the best way is. And I felt like, yeah, you had something to say, and so I'm like leaning forward, now trying to like join your path. Have you got the way? Have you, you got something to say?
I think that sometimes happens to me. Like I start this kind of interaction, and I'm really not in that place at the beginning. Yeah. But through this kind of process of jamming, of like I'm playing some notes, you're responding. Somehow we kind of tune into each other, ourselves, and to a kind of much deeper space.
It seems like you've warmed up to that more now.
What do you mean by warmed up to it more?
The jamming space, or tuning into that deeper depth of something. Mm. Was there a doubt there?
Yeah. I'm not sure. Well, I'm actually not sure what the question you're asking is, or and how to respond. So, was there a question? I wasn't sure. Oh, it was an observation.
It was an observation which I was expecting, I guess, some confirmation on. But then it was interesting to see you go the other way. And then the doubt entered the picture. Sort of. None of it.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Now, when and that can happen. Now, when we kind of make a statement and we're expecting a certain response.
I think that's a great moment. I think it's a beautiful moment if you can catch that. Pose a question and you even notice what answer you're expecting, and then the other person catches you off guard and goes the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great opportunity for the mind to this like flip-flop moment.
Mm-hmm.
And there you can see that you don't have to be so wedded to how you expect things to go.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks to the openness of the unpredictable nature of the ever unfolding present.
Yeah, and that also reveals how grounded you are in that open space of seeing and observing and
Well, Sunil, I think that was a good wrap. Actually.
Right.
Yeah, I really felt like cool stuff was coming out, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was our first jam.
Yeah, first recorded jam, not our first ever, but yeah, it was nice. Cool, thank you.
Thank you.